told me, hey, I got something fantastic to tell you. He said, I am affiliated with people that speak with the spirits of the dead. How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother? And I was shocked. I was shocked. He said, you wouldn't be afraid of talking to the spirit of your dead mother, would you? Well, I said, I'll tell you what, I would have to give that some thought, because it's something I never thought about before in my life.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age, and I wondered if back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days.
Mm.
And the priest told us, we talked for quite a while, and then he said, could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to tell you something very fascinating. He says, the grand plan, the master's grand plan for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of the spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grand plan is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about them.
In other words, so there's some persons are supposed to be able to, they believe in their immortal soul.
Astral soul projection.
Yes, right. Goes into different parts of the world and sees things and come back, and then they write all about it.
I've heard of that.
So, due to the fact that the millions of the earth, people, believe in people having an immortal soul, it has to be readily accepted when the spirits will, through a trance medium, converse with influential people of the land, you see.
Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah.
Okay.
Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved with spiritism and with the supposed inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies, I taped the whole thing in 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it would cause it to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be, there'll be no more wars, you see. There'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. There'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise.
Almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of...
and he used the words New Age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently. The spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? He will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. One person asked, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest says, that'll be no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says, the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. He says the laws will be passed, no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the venerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All these great nations and other nations, the smaller ones, were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I would never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the 7th day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. See? And regardless of what people claim to worship, worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now, at that time in your life, you were 20 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
Had you ever heard of a Seventh-day Adventist?
Never in my life.
In that meeting...
They didn't talk about Seventh-day Adventist. They talked strictly about Adventist.
Well, they just talked... But they did... The word Adventist was mentioned.
The priest was telling us that necromancy, as I mentioned earlier, is the belief that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence, etc. And he says, for centuries, friendly demon spirits have worked diligently to establish and uphold in the religious convictions of all people the belief that man has an immortal soul. See? Then he boasted about the fact that the master was so smart in that he had deceived the whole world, even in this age of great scientific knowledge and understanding. Then one person put his hand up, and that priest says, yes, we want to say something? He says, what about the Adventists? You can't count them deceived regarding the state of the dead. And I got a question. What about, how come they can't be brought under the great deception? The priest said, you're right. I apologize, says here, I made a mistake. When I said that all the millions of people living on the face of this planet, everybody, you know, was honoring the great master. I forgot the Adventists. There's so few in number when you figure the billions and all people, I didn't even think of mentioning him. So I'm sorry. Then he says, secondly, the reason why they can't be brought under the great deception, let me explain about it. Now he said, my next statement is going to upset some of you. But what I'm telling you is the honest truth. It is factual. It's reality. The fact that the Adventists observe the biblical Sabbath of creation and reverence the Creator on that day, it makes it impossible for the spirits to deceive them. They are given very special help and great spiritual insight. And he said, under these conditions, they are not ordinary people. And that stayed with me, man, just like this. And when I heard the word Adventist, when Cyril told me later on, which we're going to cover later, I asked him, I said, what denomination do you belong to? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. What's that again? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. I said, is that the same thing as Adventist? Oh yeah, he says, a lot of people call us the Adventists. They don't talk about the 70s, same thing. Boy, I was interested.
I bet you were. Now,
I wanted to know what his Bible said.
Yeah, I bet you did. Because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house. Yeah. The thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, forever. But you see, the time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening, we started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had this Bible study similar to what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.
Roger, at that time, your major language was French. You did not speak English, and all of this happened in the French language in Montreal. How long after you became a Seventh-day Adventist, or after you learned of Seventh-day Adventists, did you read the book Great Controversy by Ellen White?
Well, I joined the church. I first had the Bible studies in October of 46. In April of 47, I was baptized into the church. In September of that year, Hilda and I got married. And the French church in Montreal gave us, as a wedding gift, the Conflict of the Ages series. And I had not read the Great Controversy up to then.
But then you read it.
Yeah.
And what went through your mind when you read the book Great Controversy, thinking back on the experience you'd had maybe just a year or so before?
That's right.
What went through your mind?
This person is inspired. This person has got knowledge that nobody else has on the face of the earth, except, the spiritists that I was mentioning, because it's so unique. See?
Well, I find it very remarkable that they were willing to share the strategy that Satan is working on with this group. Of course, their plan was that it would never get out.
That's right.
Under seal of death.
That's right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything about the Great Master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away what's taking place. They did with my Bible study by Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, the spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, you have one of your defectors. He says, that Morneau guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists, the people that the Master hates most on the face of the earth. And the high priest almost had a heart attack. Because he said, I kind of like you. He said, that's what he told my friend. Because I didn't see him after that. But he told my friend to try to convince me to go back, to spirit worship.